Deadly shootout. Two robbers hold up a jewelry store, abduct a UPS driver, and lead police on a chaotic two-county chase that ends in a hail of bullets. Did police act correctly? We'll ask a former police officer and a state lawmaker.
Murder. They murder him.
Lashing out. The family of that UPS driver is demanding answers and accountability. Frank Ordonez's stepdad is with us live, as are those who know the front lines of policing.
The Jewish state has never had a better friend in the White House than your president, Donald J. Trump.
Presidential visit. Donald Trump back in South Florida last night, wooing Jewish voters and raising money for the Florida GOP. How's he doing? Good morning. So glad you could join us. I'm Michael Putney.
I'm Glenna Milberg. Catastrophic chase and shootout with deadly consequences has sparked a South Florida debate. Two violent career criminals began Thursday's rush hour catastrophe in a robbery shootout in Coral Gables. They carjacked the UPS driver for an hour-long cross-county chase and shooting at police along the way. They were cornered at a busy intersection in Miramar, setting off a complicated chain of events involving dozens of police officers from several jurisdictions. Those criminals fired, setting off a shootout that killed them and two innocent victims.
And one of those victims was 27-year-old Frank Ordonez of Hialeah. The UPS driver was a father of two, a son, a brother, with his whole life in front of him. The other innocent victim was Richard Rick Cutshaw of Pembroke Pines, age 70. He was just trying to drive home after a day at work as a union representative. He was hit by bullets as he sat in his car. There is no doubt the two people most responsible for this horrendous incident were the perpetrators themselves, Lamar Alexander and Ronnie Hill, both of Miami, both career criminals with long rap sheets. They started this tragic chain of events and police ended it.
But how they ended it is now in question. Could it have ended somehow without bloodshed? Did their actions cause the deaths of two innocent men? We want to talk all about this morning with our guests. And first up with us, Joe Merino, who is Frank Ordonez's stepdad, who is speaking, has been speaking for his family, heartbroken, angry. Joe Merino right there joining us today from his home in Hialeah. Joe, it is so good of you to join us, and again, our condolences to you and your family for what happened. You know, we spoke Friday morning. It was the heat of the moment. You had some very harsh words. You are the rightful voice of all who are asking very tough questions. The FBI has been with you and your family. Bring us today's perspective from you and your family, if you would.
First of all, Glenna, you and Michael, good morning to you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you today. The family's devastated, and that's an understatement. The way we feel, we're in a bad dream that I know we're going to wake up and Frank's going to be home. But it's starting to set in that it's now 72 hours, and I think we're just about woken up from that dream, and Frank's not here. I just can't console my wife. There's no words. There's nothing I can do. She's a mother. I'm a father, but she's a mother. And the whole family, the girls, the brothers, we're all devastated, and we all are asking ourselves questions. How can this happen in this day and age with technology, with the training? It's something that we don't have answers to, and we're looking for answers. And that's why I'm speaking with both of you. I'm not a police officer, and I'm not an attorney. I'm the spokesperson for the family. I'm Frank's voice, and through you and Michael, I can get my message out. We want accountability. We want changes. We want to know why wasn't the local police securing the area? Why didn't they wait for SWAT? Or what happened to the hostage negotiator? Where are the snipers in these type of situations? It seems to me that there was a free-for-all. I'm hearing from a reliable source that there were over 6,000 bullets. The truck alone was riddled with at least 60 to 70 bullet holes. As you can see the video, I knew he was dead. I wanted a last hope for my wife and daughters because we thought he was at the Joe DiMaggio Trauma Center and he wasn't there. I've got more information, Glenna and Michael, from the FBI. They've been so gracious. They met us at the hospital. They followed us home. They've been in contact with me ever since. And they're the ones that gave me more information. I understand they're in control now. But there's no answers here. I haven't heard from many of those police departments. They want to go on. They want to go on record. They want to go on TV and say that. I think the Metro director of Metro Police. I think I heard him briefly say that out of all the options we're exhausted. This is the better option. That's the best we could do. That's shameful for someone to declare that. Is plain out shameful. It's actually embarrassing. See, one of my problems is that those officers that went home that night to their spouses and they went home to their kids, they got to go home. Frank didn't get to go home. And I'm just wondering, and this is just a thought that I was thinking about because I haven't slept in 48 hours. None of us have. And I'm wondering, I asked my wife, what if the tides were turned? What if it was an officer that was involved in the hostage? I'm sure it would have been handled differently, and I'm sure that officer would have been alive today.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm using a strong word.
Joe, it's Michael.
Yes.
If I could
Yes, Michael.
jump in, first of all, my personal condolences. Inconceivable to lose his son the way you and your family have. Do you have confidence the FBI can do a thorough, full, fair investigation and come back with a report? And if some officers should be held accountable for Frank's death, that they will be?
Absolutely, and I hope so. I think that now that the FBI has taken over, there's some things that have been revealed to me that I'm sorry I can't discuss at this time because it's an open investigation. But there's many things that they can identify, many things of the investigation. Yes, the way the FBI treated us that same Thursday night at the hospital, and then for them to drive with us and follow us home and stay with us, and then the next morning, a couple hours later, I even asked, I don't want to reveal the name, but I said, I told the agent, I said, you guys, did you get any sleep? I said, I couldn't get any sleep. I said, neither did we. I said, I was so touched by your story. And they've been here, they've been assisting us, but what's disappointing, Michael and Glenna, is that I haven't heard from any of those 5 or 6 agencies that were involved in the chase and involved in this tragedy. None, not even a phone call. And that says a lot, Michael and Glenna. One of the things I mentioned to Glenna yesterday was that I warned before I mentioned it. I said, I'm going to use a real strong word, Michael and Glenna. And Glenna, you were there. And I said, this is murder. This is murder. They could have stopped it. They could have prevented it. It could have been avoided. Frank was trying to escape. If you saw him crawling down the passenger side steps and he was trying to crawl down, he's had his hands wide open like just to say that I'm unarmed. I think I'm interpreting that move that he was trying to for cover underneath the truck. If they would have ceased fire for a few seconds, Frank would have made it under the truck. He would have hidden for cover and then shoot the robber, which they ended up shooting them anyway. And by the way, I heard that I saw you initially on your telecast that one of them spent 10 years for armed robbery, and the other one spent 7 years for the armed robbery. They're on the street, Michael. Glenna, how is that possible?
Joe, when we are looking at the people you were talking to now, yes, these 2 men did serve prison terms. Our understanding here is that their sentences ended, and that's why they were released. But you bring up so many important questions that this community and everyone in it will be scrutinizing along with you in the coming days and weeks and months. We feel for you. We are here to support you. We thank you for being with us, and we will be in touch and absolutely following to get the answers to all of those questions that you and your family are asking. Joe, thanks so much for being here.
Joe, thank you. We appreciate it.
If I may,
yes,
thank you.
Go ahead.
No, if
absolutely.
if I may, I just want to leave you both with one word: justice. And that's all we're seeking is justice. We want this to come out. I don't want this story to die off. I don't want it to be swept under the rug. I want justice, and that's all we're asking for, Glenna and Michael. Is that too hard to ask? I don't think so.
It is not.
It
and
is
we
not.
Thank you for asking.
Joe Merino, thank you so much. All right, up next, we're going to turn to a police veteran and a former criminal prosecutor who now serves in the state Senate. Now we want to get some professional perspective on that terrible shootout that happened late Thursday afternoon
For that, we
I'm sorry.
Well, for that we have two experienced law enforcement professionals for some insights with us this morning. John Rivera is the former president of the Miami-Dade Police Union, the PBA, Police Benevolent Association. He's retired now, retired sergeant with Miami-Dade PD. Jason Pizzo is a state senator representing the 38th District Northeast, Miami-Dade. He's a former assistant state attorney with experience prosecuting major crimes and a member of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee as well. Really value your insights today. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Glad to have you come in. All right, you both have seen the video. I've seen your comments on it, but John Rivera, let me ask you first, as an experienced police officer, head of the PBA, when you saw the video of the officers approaching that UPS truck at that intersection, did they make a mistake in the way they approached that truck?
You know, Michael, for years I've been dealing with situations like this, and one thing that I've learned is not to judge, prejudge. I think there has to be, the investigation has to be complete. I think now we have body cameras.
Too early?
I think it's too early. I think, and the thing that we need really the most is patience, which is hard to do. It's hard for the family to have patience. It's hard for the community to have patience. We have a lot of questions.
You know, that is such a valid point. However, we all watched this happen. From the beginning almost, the news choppers were overhead. And I think when a community, civilians that do not know police work and the facts that might be hidden to us now, it is really difficult to have seen frame by frame of what happened and not be able to really ask some, I think, valid questions about why did this happen and why couldn't another thing happen. So let's start with the chase. And if we have some video, maybe we can watch along as we talk about this hour-long chase. Jason Pizzo, did this not give some time for law enforcement to decide a course of action?
Glenna and Michael, to your point, and thanks for having me on, this is one case we're going to have to work backwards. What's been seen cannot be unseen. So the public is going to see a number of videos where there's a long, extended chase with a lot less traffic in certain areas, both on exits and both on the highway. And what's been seen, as I said, cannot be unseen. Now, there are procedures and protocols as it relates to different departments, whether or not they can use what's called a pit maneuver that everybody knows about, a pursuit immobilization technique. But yeah, just as a layperson watching this, you're going to say right here, looking at this shot of the video, why didn't they box him out, get in front, hit the back? You're going to have all kinds of those questions.
Yeah, John, what do you think? I mean,
Well,
why didn't they use nudge the truck from the rear in the back, maybe turn it around a little bit, stop it? I mean, that is a standard technique, I guess.
It is standard in some departments. It is prohibited in the Miami-Dade Police
Really?
Department. We don't practice it. We don't profess it. Nothing. We're not allowed to do it. Some departments are allowed. But also you have a situation when you say get in front of the truck, we know now that there's two armed suspects who have already indiscriminately shot throughout the whole chase. The last thing you want to do is put a police officer in the front so that he himself becomes a victim as well.
Or she.
Or she. Or she. So it's a difficult thing. Look, there's a lot of questions, a lot of valid questions. I have my own questions that none of you guys are even thinking about. Why is the FBI the lead on this case?
Yeah, why are they?
Why are they?
Maybe because it's multi-jurisdictional?
That has nothing to do with it.
Speaking of jurisdictions, you mentioned Miami-Dade police are not allowed to do those maneuvers. The chase started in Coral Gables, started in Miami-Dade, but crossed over to Broward. Why wasn't jurisdiction handed off to either Miramar or Pembroke Pines or Broward Sheriff's
Jason,
Office?
do you know?
Why wasn't that handed off?
Typically, we have what are called MOUs, a memorandum of understanding between departments. So back in 2012, there was an incident where a car was stolen from my house from one of my defendants. They used the car out in Miami Beach for an armed robbery. They were chased by Miami Beach police. They entered into the city of Miami, and I was living in Coral Gables. So all three departments were involved. But typically there's a radio head, there's an understanding between Miami-Dade police as a whole throughout the 34 municipalities will have jurisdiction to be able to go in through cities. But yeah, those are one of the questions is did Coral Gables radio head say we're in pursuit? Did Miami-Dade say we're taking it over? And then obviously to the FBI question.
Yeah, Senator, let's kind of focus for a minute on maybe the most tenuous, dangerous moment in this hour-and-a-half long incident, which was when the police rushed the truck. It had been stopped at Miramar Parkway in Flamingo, and it was surrounded, if we show it here on the video, by all these civilian videos of civilian cars. and the police officers take cover behind these civilians in their cars and put them at risk. I mean, maybe that's a human reaction, but it just strikes me as, the wrong thing to do.
Michael, a couple months ago, sitting in the Senate, we were discussing and determining the fate of the Broward sheriff based on the actions, the inaction and cowardice of a few deputies who did not engage.
Right.
Here, if we're just standing alone taking the intersection, the police officers themselves, the men and women, are being incredibly brave by going into the fire.
Yes, they
The
are.
issue, of course, is they're not standing behind unoccupied blocks or walls or containers. There are women and men and children inside of these cars that are trying to get out of the way, and you have to presume that when they're firing, they're also drawing fire in return,
Right.
and doing so, and that's what jumps out at you, regardless of whether or not you have 30 years law enforcement experience or you're watching as a 10-year-old. You're seeing why are occupied vehicles being used for cover.
The time factor, I want to go back to that if I can, John Rivera. Joe Merino, Frank Ordonez's stepdad, brought up two questions that I thought were really interesting. Where was SWAT? Where was the sharpshooter? In the heat of the moment, of course, they're not there. But this played out over the course of an hour, and so why wasn't a decision made to prepare one of those, to get a SWAT or a sharpshooter in place, or be part of the contingent of police officers following this, so that they were in place to be able to have a more, directed shot? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't know what decisions were made. I wasn't privy to the radio transmissions. But even if you were preparing, you have to remember that a sharpshooter, or a sniper as we call them, they have to have time to set up. This unfolded at that moment in time, in seconds. A sniper would have never been able to set up that quickly, or SWAT for that matter. SWAT generally speaking, goes to a scene that's already been contained somehow. Then they have a plan and action.
This was
and then
a
they move it.
developing
This
crime
was
scene.
it, right. And the other thing that's very important, which the senator alluded to, this was an active shooting scene. This was an active shooter. It was just a moving active shooter. 22 months ago, we were criticizing police for not doing anything.
To Jason's
Now,
point.
today, the discussion is we did too much. And so we have to do. The other thing, if I may, one of the things that I have found out in all these cases is that there's a lot of misinformation because that's what we think we saw. Depending on what lens you look through.
Of course.
But you all made reference to civilian vehicles. Now, I saw what you saw, and I thought the same thing. But I then saw a video that I was able to slow down, and I'm not so sure that those two SUVs that you all are talking about are civilian vehicles.
Well, as a matter of fact, one of the innocent people in this case who died was a driver sitting
That was
in
towards
his
the front.
civilian
They weren't
cab.
hiding behind that car.
True, yeah.
Right.
And I will say, in the last few days, in our news capacity, we've had an opportunity to really watch this frame by horrible frame. It appears to me at the intersection that the first shots fired were from inside the UPS, the criminals shooting out. Was it the duty of police to fire back? Is there any part of training or protocol that would have allowed them to hold their fire?
So a couple of things to John's point about misconception. The Miami-Dade Police Car, and I've taken ride-alongs and spent hundreds of hours, as you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours at the Miami-Dade Police Department. At Northside Station, all over the county, I do ride-alongs as well. But police patrol cars are not bulletproof, not even bullet resistant. They don't have sheets in the door, not in the glass. Otherwise, you would assume they would all have converged on and kept safe around there.
That's news to me, I have to say. I
They
didn't know that.
They are not bulletproof. They don't even have a plate in the door to protect them. So someone's SUV is just as resistant as a patrol car. However, Joe Merino is wondering, and hoping and wishing that the UPS truck had just been allowed to keep on going without engaging, right? Mr. Cutshaw's family, standing at the intersection, is hoping that there was no engagement whatsoever. Be very mindful to know that if this all came just to the intersection, the cops did what the cops did. Okay, the police did what the police did. But it's leading up to that point now. The doors swung open even for the long chase. It appears to be that there's an exchange of fire even going on the highway.
The Miami-Dade Police Director actually confirms that is
On
the case.
I-75.
Right,
Yeah.
and the inception of exchange of fire did not just first occur at the intersection.
Right.
But again,
Started at the Coral Gables jewelry store.
had
as
the
a matter of
UPS
fact.
truck been allowed to go and continue, without coming to that stop, I don't know that that rampant gunfire exchange continues to happen and puts others at risk. It's very easy to second guess. It's just any situation which does not involve being near innocent civilians, which there appear to be ample time beforehand. Would we have second guessed if they did a pit maneuver, if they blocked the truck, if they knocked it off the road? Absolutely. But I think there would have been more forgiveness leading up to it. And I think this is an excellent opportunity, a sad but tragic opportunity, as an impetus to compel us to take a hard look at how we're going to handle these situations.
Yeah, well, Mayor Carlos Jimenez said exactly that to me on Friday. We are going to take a hard look, but it's going to be months before this investigation is finished. John Rivera,
Absolutely.
my friend, great to have you come in.
you.
Senator Jason Pizzo,
Thanks
thank you
so
very
much.
much.
And up next, we'll take the shootout, the visit by the president to town, and so much more to the roundtable. So stay tuned.
Well, what a week it has been for news here in South Florida. The violent shootout between police and those career criminals. Another visit by President Trump.
So much to break down with our Powerhouse Roundtable, and we have a great one for you today. Ed Pozzuoli is the president of the Tripp Scott Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale and past chair of the Republican Party of Broward County. Melba Pearson is the deputy director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Florida and a former prosecutor with the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. Stephen Johnson chairs Miami-Dade County's Black Affairs Advisory Board. He is an attorney with the Lydecker Diaz firm. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, everybody. We are so glad that you are here. I sort of want to get you all to weigh in. I think, Ed, you just said as we were coming on here that not since the shootout at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas has our community been shaken to the core by such a violent incident. And I think we don't want to be Monday morning quarterbacks, but you see this video and you ask, I think there are legitimate questions to ask, are there not?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you had the father on him. It was sad, and hearts go to him. But on the other hand, there are a lot of questions. And before we jump to conclusions to assess blame, because we seem to try to jump to that, I think you've got to let the facts kind of spill out as they come out and as they're investigated. I think that's in fairness to the police officer involved and everybody involved. I think you really got to be careful about jumping to conclusions.
The community reacted emotionally, as can be expected, but I think, what our job is as news people is to take an objective, harsh, clarified look, and that's what we're trying to do. But interesting point in that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and this incident, slaughter of innocents is what really captures the attention, but the police response was so different.
And you got to think about it, right? We criticized the police response in the MSD shooting, and now we're on the verge of yet again criticizing a police response. I'm going to say this, though. Until we know from the FDLE investigation whether or not anyone did anything wrong, until we know who was in command and control of that scene, until we know whether or not there was a breakdown in command and control, and I don't know that there was, but until we know that, it's hard to criticize police officers for doing two things: engaging bad guys and staying alive while doing it, right?
Armed bad guys.
We want them to, in the middle of a kidnapping. So we got to remember what the crimes were here. We had a kidnapping, we had a shootout in Coral Gables, we had shootouts on the roadways the whole way, and now we're there in an intersection and they're still shooting.
Right.
So telling police officers or expecting police officers to somehow become bulletproof supermen is insane. And the bravery seen by some of those officers standing there, engaging, trying to at least get in there and save a life, we have to, for a moment, commend it. Now we should go back and criticize. We should go back
and at least review it.
Yeah,
we should review it.
Yeah.
Right.
Weigh in here, Melba.
Well, so first of all, my heart goes out to the families involved because, we're weeks away from the holidays, Christmas,
Right.
Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and now they're laying their loved ones to rest. And there's children involved who are not going to be able to see their loved ones. So I want to keep them primary focused on this. But the father is not wrong in wanting to have answers, as we all want answers. I'm sure the FBI and the FDLE investigation will reveal more, and we'll learn more about the protocols that were involved or were followed or not followed. But I do have a lot of questions with regards to if there was any opportunity to de-escalate this situation. Could spike strips have been used? I mean, we have so much technology. Could that have played a factor and saved lives? Yeah. And again, when you look at that crowded intersection and people are literally just trying to get home, and suddenly there's bullets flying your way, I mean, that whole fact of the matter that the civilians were placed in danger. Granted, no question, the people who perpetrated this crime set the wheels in motion. Yeah. But it is on the police to make sure to contain the situation and keep people safe in the process. But we will know once we get the medical examiner's report and see which bullet killed who and all of that.
But
so
I want
we'll
to emphasize, I want to give the police at least the benefit of the doubt because they did engage. The question is were there other opportunities to engage, and did they engage appropriately? Yeah. That's something I think facts will come out later on. Exactly. But I don't, laying blame, and I understand completely where the family is, and I would feel the same emotion.
Oh, yeah.
But as a public policy standpoint, we want our police to engage and protect us from bad people.
I've often said that when the average American sees policing and what that is, sometimes they're not going to like what they see. And I've spoken to retired Chief Oates and other police officers to find out, was there anything broken here? And in and of itself, bad guys...
On this account?
On this account, yes. Bad guys shooting changes the paradigm, right? Because at that point, you're a risk to the general public, you're a risk to the other officers, that's a different animal than, a jewelry heist going on.
Yeah, these guys set the tone. The minute they walked into the jewelry store on Miracle Mile, fired, and thank God the clerk, the woman who was there, was grazed in the forehead, but she could have been killed as well. And then the shootout with the owner and the manager, I mean, the tone of this was set immediately, and it only escalated as it went further into Broward County.
And let's not forget that in addition to Frank Ordonez, there was yet another bystander, and that's the
Rick
part,
Crenshaw.
Rick Crenshaw, and that's the part that we want to remember. We do want to remember those two people who died for no reason.
For no reason.
No reason whatsoever, and their families.
I want to, the director of the Miami-Dade Police Department, Juan Perez, came forward Friday morning, talked really for a while, answered questions about training and policy. He was unflinching in his support for his people. Let's take a listen to a little clip of what the director had to say.
They dictated this, not law enforcement. We train and we practice, and we have practices in place for all types of situations. But unfortunately, training is a simulated situation, and the subjects, sometimes they don't dictate as we want them to. So they take actions outside of how we train, and circumstances sometimes aren't the ideal circumstances. Where that vehicle came to a stop, we didn't choose that location.
So I'm hearing, Ed, training, as great and thorough as it may be, and as often as it may be, can't ever come close to what might happen in real life.
Let me take the corollary to that. What he's saying is he does not want his officers hesitating in a real life it's not a training situation anymore where we can do it over and try it again. Right. No, this is real life, and he does not want his officers second guessing themselves and causing them to hesitate, because that will cause further danger.
But at the same token, I still have to caution, maybe not hesitate, but you also can't have a knee-jerk reaction, because we have a situation where we have literally hundreds of rounds, because you have, 8 to 10 officers emptying their clip into a situation, and again, an innocent bystander was killed. So all due respect to the director, I'm not saying that there was a problem with the training or anything like that, but I still have the question whether or not this could have been brought to a conclusion sooner, in a more deserted area as opposed into the middle of rush hour traffic.
In my talks with, again, in trying to speak with others in law enforcement, this is one of those situations that they may not have particularly trained for. A shootout on a high-speed chase.
Well, that's a problem.
In rush. No, but let's think about this.
It's true.
Because in rush hour, where's the chase going, right? I can't
That's why
get
it
from one
stopped where it stopped.
Exactly
right.
So this might not have been a specific scenario that they have trained extensively for.
Quick break, and let's pick up right here when we get right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to a very thoughtful roundtable on this particular Sunday. Stephen Johnson, Melba Pearson, Ed Pizzoli. Ed, you had mentioned as we were breaking away that Mr. Merino, whom we heard from earlier, distraught, grieving over the loss of his son, said he has never heard from any of the police agencies involved, only from the FBI, and no FBI agent fired a weapon at that scene. Should some agency, should Miami-Dade Police or Miramar, should they go to him and say, we're so sorry for the loss of your son?
From a human standpoint, the answer is absolutely they should. Legally, I understand there may be some restrictions, but the bottom line is that they should, because some of the communication, some of the frustration that's built up by the victim's family, and rightfully so, is the lack of empathy that appears to be coming out of the agencies. And Stephen's going to
say, but these agencies, and again, we represent many of them. These agencies don't have an opportunity to come out. A lot of times they don't know what's happened. The Officer's Bill of Rights prevents you from really getting full stories right away often, particularly in shooting circumstances. If you want those warm and fuzzy moments, then we're going to need to change some laws. I'm all for making changes to the Bill of Rights. I'm just telling you.
No one's asking to script or get around some litigation. All somebody is asking for, this man is, any of us would want, was someone to even come forward and sincerely say, I'm prevented legally from saying a lot. I want you to know as a parent, I feel for you and your family. My condolences.
Yeah.
What's litigious
a little
about
human
that?
compassion
Yeah,
would go a
milk of
long
human
way.
kindness.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. It'd be crushing for anything to happen to any of my children. I'll be honest. If someone gave me something like, I can't tell you anything, but I know how you feel, I wouldn't want to hear from you anyway.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. At that moment, unless you're going to tell me everything that happened, don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
The emotions are too raw.
Yeah, I do want to say on behalf of Miami-Dade Police Director Juan Perez, whom I have a lot of respect for, that the day that Joe Merino said, my son was murdered, he very calmly and with feeling said, I understand, I'm a father.
Yeah.
If it were my son, I might be saying this too. And I mean, he did not in any way criticize Mr. Merino.
Right.
Which, yeah, that definitely was a good idea and definitely is very sensitive on the director's part. But I think that still doesn't take away the fact that you have a victim's family left without answers. And I think, and I understand the legal perspective as a former prosecutor, I get it. But at the same token, there's a way to at least, say, I'm sorry that this happened. We have an ongoing investigation. We're going to do everything we can to get to the bottom of this and give you answers in a timely manner. By the way, here are some victim services. Here's a victim advocate who at least can direct you for grief counseling or something to at least show that you care and that you are taking the situation seriously. Not saying they're not, but to communicate that to the victim's family, which is huge, huge. And
Being there and being available for that family
Right.
is simply the statement you need to make.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
most departments have what's known as victims advocates or victim services advocates, which is an
When you were at the
avenue
state
to-
attorney's office, that was part of your responsibility.
Absolutely. We had victim advocates who would be with the family everything from the time of we're investigating, we're about to file, all the way till trial. You had somebody who you can call and say, what's going on with the case? Maybe you couldn't get a hold of the attorney, but you got some answers and were able to, help move forward a little bit.
The director even coming forward, because it's an FBI case now legally, the director coming forward Friday, instead of saying to reporters, no, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking, I thought showed a lot of leadership. I did. Was that a protocol breach of any sort?
No, and in fact, in these sorts of public controversies and matters, the transparency shown by a department or a department head goes a long way in making sure that the public feels informed. Again, we were talking about the same thing that the family wants to know. What's going on? Where are we? I remember North Miami actually led the way in its transparency during the Kinsey shooting, where they put every document online, including the FDLE investigation. And I'd like to see more organizations and more municipalities do these types of things.
Absolutely, because transparency is key in building that relationship with the community and diffusing some of these situations from getting out of hand.
I watched the statements. I thought the director's statements were very, very appropriate and very well measured, and really focusing on the tragedy, focusing on the victims, focusing on some of the protocol, whatever he could provide. I thought they were really quite showed great leadership, to your point.
All right, everybody hold your thoughts. We have more to talk about, including the visit to South Florida by President Trump. More on that in just a minute. Welcome back. Only if you could see what goes on here during the commercial breaks. Sometimes more interesting.
Maybe one day. We'll make that happen.
All right, let's move forward and talk a little bit about the visit to South Florida last night by President Trump. He first went to Turnberry Isle in Aventura, my hometown. And Ed, I know you were there for at least part of that event. And the Republican Party of Florida says 1,000 people raised $3.5 million. Boy, that's a big number.
Quite a success. Quite a success. And honestly, a very enthusiastic group. I mean, the president was there. You had a governor who was there. You had the cabinet that was there. Leadership was there. You had a great event.
You know, but I have to say, as far as I can tell, since this statesman's dinner, as it was called, was a complete disaster about a month ago, it was only because Ron DeSantis got involved, called his friend the president and said, you got to come and be our headliner, that it really came together.
My experience with these kind of dinners is they're a disaster until they're not. You know, until you get a great speaker or until you get a great headliner. And frankly, the governor could have been the headliner. We could have raised $3.5 million alone. But the president brought a tremendous amount of enthusiasm.
And much more low key than his appearance a couple of weeks ago at the BB&T.
If you take everyone's phone at the door and make sure that no one can say anything except positive things, especially when you're having two accused and or convicted war criminals on the stage with you. A lot can, that happened. So everyone's phone was taken for a reason. No, that happened.
Were you there?
I've got friends I even have friends on that side of the aisle.
Did they send you contraband cell video?
I wish, again, there's a comedian who did that and everybody gave him a hard time on Twitter. Now our president does this just for a local Republican dinner. I've never seen this in my life. I've been to a bunch of Democratic dinners. We never had to give one.
What do you have? 3 people show up?
Wrong. Here we go.
That might have started with Mitt Romney. Remember the Mitt Romney cell phone?
Right.
Well, that might have started.
What I said earlier was, look, if Obama had brought Suge Knight onto the stage and everybody clapped and gave them a hero's welcome, it would never leave the news cycle. But our president brings, no matter how you feel about it, people who admitted to murdering people onto the stage, and they got a hero's welcome.
He had the Navy SEAL with him last night?
He had 2. He had the 2 he just pardoned. One was the lieutenant who was who was convicted of ordering 2 motorcyclists shot.
Right.
The other one.
In Iraq.
The other one was a guy who said, hey, I don't know what happened, until he got on Fox News a while later and said, hey, did you kill him? Oh, yeah, I killed him. That's not necessarily what I expect from my president when being presidential or when raising money. I wonder about that.
Right, and then you have the transparency aspect as well, because now you have, all of the Florida, leadership, from the governor and the cabinet and everyone there. I'm very curious to know what was discussed. Was it just purely, okay, let's raise money, or were we talking about?
I wish there was a camera on Ed's face.
Or what really happened?
Respond to that.
I would say it this way. Here's the thing. You got a president who was at BB&T, and you all were there.
Yes, we were.
And it was great entertainment. You saw the excitement in the arena. This was a tremendous success, $3.5 million. The previous event he went to, when he went to meet with Jewish leaders with respect to what great support he's been to Israel. This is a president who, like it or not, is busy and is doing all the right things in my mind to make look.
And
I'm
busy
going
and-
to say this.
And
I'm gonna
about
say
to
this,
be
Michael.
impeached too. But
Can I just, before
that's
we
a
run
whole
out
other
of
sham.
we,
But
we-
anyway,
we
we'll talk about
are out of time. But
I just
think
want
I
to
know
go
where
on
you're
record as
going.
saying Suge Knight would absolutely lead our newscast. Just saying. Go ahead.
This much I know.
Thank
Stephen,
you,
Melba,
everybody.
Ed, great to have you come in. All right, so to come, my personal perspective about that shootout. Did the police do the right thing?
All right, before we get back to Michael and Glenna, going to get you a quick check on the forecast because it's 80 degrees, believe it or not, and it definitely feels like it out there. We got a nice breeze coming in off the water, and it's bringing in a few showers. You can see a couple of downpours, heads up in Dania Beach and Hollywood. On the Broadwalk, a couple of heavy downpours. In Miami Beach, eventually, we could get some showers in here. Just a 20% chance of some hit and miss showers today. Again, we're hitting our high right now, and then temperatures, check it out. Warm up on the way. Humidity is coming up. You can't see that on the 7-day, but by Tuesday, we're going to be feeling it.
All right, Brandon, thank you. Before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about that horrendous shootout Thursday afternoon in Miramar. I've been a reporter here a long time, decades. I have never seen anything like that. Life suddenly became more precious and more capricious in just a few minutes. We were all transfixed by the video broadcast live. A big UPS truck speeding up I-75, barreling through Century Village of all places, weaving around before finally getting stuck in traffic at Flamingo Road and the Miramar Parkway. All this unfolding on live TV, and the next thing we knew, police officers with guns out running toward that truck. The two robbers inside firing back with everything they had, and dozens of civilians there stuck in their cars, which police used as shields. Their lives were wrongly put at risk. And one of those civilians, 70-year-old Rick Cutshaw, was shot to death. By whose gun, we don't know. We do know that, tragically, 27-year-old Frank Ordonez, the UPS driver, was killed by the gunfire. By whose gun, yet to be determined. There is so much we don't know yet, and I don't think anyone should rush to judgment. Yes, in a perfect world, police would have found a way to stop the UPS truck in an open area, say on I-75. And also in that perfect world, a hostage negotiator would have come in, talked to the criminals, talked them into surrendering, or a SWAT team could have been put into position with a sniper to take them out. But that just was not possible in this case. So for now, let's let the FBI, the lead investigative agency, collect the evidence, interview the witnesses, do the forensics. This much is already clear. No matter what policies and planning police have in place or what practice scenarios they run, the real scenario is always different and usually much worse. This time, so much worse. Let's pray for the victims and for our community. That's my perspective for this week. I hope you have a great Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved.
And get online, because there you can catch any of our programs on local10.com. And while you're there, you can also subscribe online to our This Week in South Florida podcast. We are everywhere. Stay tuned right now for SoFlo Health right here. That's next, and have a beautiful Sunday.